Okay, so a lot of us probably think we know the story of Queen Esther, right? It's this amazing tale of bravery, this young Jewish woman who ends up saving her entire people. But to really, truly get the weight of what she did, we have to go back. We have to step into her world, the ancient Persian Empire. So let's dive into this world of unbelievable power and honestly terrifying danger.
And that brings us to the real question at the heart of this whole thing. Why on earth couldn't a queen just, talk to her husband, the king? Why was something as simple as asking a favor a potential death sentence? The answer, it turns out, has nothing to do with just bad manners. It's built into the very DNA of the most powerful empire on earth at the time.
And if you want to get a sense of the sheer scale of that empire, you just need one number, 127. That's how many provinces, according to the texts, the Persian Empire ruled over. We're not talking about a kingdom here. This was a global superpower. And trying to manage all of that required a very, very specific kind of power structure. So, to really feel the stakes in Esther's story, you first have to appreciate the massive stage where all unfolds. Let's start there, with this vast and absolutely dazzling empire. I mean, just try to picture that for a second. A single, unified empire that stretched all the way from what we now call India, across the Middle East, and deep into Africa. Think of all the different cultures, the languages, the religions, all of it held together under the authority of one supreme ruler. And right at the center of this massive web was the city of Susa. This place wasn't just a capital. It was a statement. It was designed from the ground up to scream wealth and absolute power. The incredible palaces, the grand halls, every single part of it was a constant, in-your-face reminder to everyone, from foreign ambassadors to the queen herself, of exactly who was in charge. Which brings us perfectly to our next point. Let's zoom in now from this giant empire to the one person where all that power was concentrated, the king. And his power was, in a word, absolute. Now, the king in this story is often called Ahasuerus, but historians are pretty sure this was Xerxes I. And ancient sources, like the Greek historian Herodotus, paint this picture of a man of wild extremes. On one hand, he could throw these unbelievably lavish parties that lasted for months. But on the other hand, he was known to be totally unpredictable, and he had a famously dangerous temper. And this is absolutely crucial. You have to get this to understand the story. In the Persian Empire, when a king made a decree, it wasn't just a law, it was set in stone. Irrevocable. Once it was sealed with his ring, it could not be changed. Not by anyone, not even by the king himself. It's a detail that drives the entire plot. And the text itself just lays out the danger in the clearest way possible. This wasn't about being rude or breaking some stuffy court rule. If you went to see the king without being called for, the penalty was death, period. That single law created this invisible but absolutely lethal wall around the most powerful man in the world. Okay, so you've got this all-powerful, totally unpredictable king. Now imagine being Jewish, like Esther and her cousin Mordecai, and trying to build a life inside this empire. What was that like? Well, it was a total paradox, this weird mix of opportunity and constant danger. The Jewish people were scattered all across those 127 provinces. And sure, they could make a life, maybe even find success, but they were always living under foreign rule, always the outsiders, and they faced this constant pressure of trying to keep their own identity and faith alive in a world that wasn't theirs. And that context makes Mordecai's advice to Esther make so much sense. When she gets taken to the palace, he tells her point blank, do not tell anyone you're Jewish. This wasn't just him being overly cautious. No, this was a cold, calculated survival strategy. He knew that revealing her identity could instantly put her in a vulnerable position, maybe even put her life in danger. Because at the end of the day, here's the bottom line. The safety of the entire Jewish community was never, ever guaranteed. Their very existence depended on the shifting tides of politics in the palace, on the whims of powerful men. One bad day for the king, one political whisper in his ear, and the tolerance they enjoyed could just vanish. So, why did we just spend all this time on a history lesson? Here's why. Because without this context, the story of Esther is a nice little fairy tale. But with it, it becomes a high-stakes political thriller where everything is on the line. It really all boils down to these three pillars that defined her reality.
First, the epic scale of the empire, which meant that a decree to kill her people would go out everywhere. Second, the king's absolute and unpredictable power, which made appealing to him a literal life or death gamble. And third, the complete vulnerability of her people, who had no army, no political leverage, nothing to defend themselves. So you see, when you put all those pieces together, the picture is so much clearer. Esther wasn't just asking a favor. She was a member of a targeted minority, illegally approaching a volatile dictator to try and overturn an unchangeable law, all to stop a state-sponsored genocide. That's not just bravery. That is courage on an absolutely epic scale.
So we'll just leave you with this to think about. When the odds are that stacked against you, when power is that absolute, and your life is so clearly on the line, what does real courage even look like? It's a pretty powerful question.